That's my Serenity song. How do you know my Serenity song?
Don't worry about it.
Life was a song, you came along.
So now if you'll excuse me, they're playing my jam.
No one else can feel it for you, only you can let it in.
This video is for the romance girlies who have a song and a dance in their hearts. Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and on my channel I like to talk about entertainment media. If you watched my previous video about Anyone But You, where I focused on the film's many Shakespeare Easter eggs, you will have heard me say that I wasn't going to overly elaborate on the topic of Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten, because I had a whole other thesis about that. Well, we have officially reached said thesis. I wanted to talk about why the use of this song in the film became as pop culturally pervasive as it did. The reason for that is not just because it's a great song. We already knew that. Some of us still have the CDs and showed them to Will Gluck on the Anyone But You press junket. The other reason why I feel like you made the movie for me specifically is because I love Natasha Bedingfield. These are the CDs. I pulled them out of storage. It's also not just because TikTok exists now. There were all these videos of girls filming themselves, skipping out of the cinema after seeing Anyone But You, with Unwritten playing over those TikToks. Girls captioning what they were posting with praise for the film, saying that rom coms were back, saying that they were ready to fall in love, and so on and so forth. I am here to argue that the song being a bop and TikTok trends being able to spread like wildfire are not the core reason why the song had the level of impact it did. It may have helped to magnify the reach of the song's resurgence, but if you really want to understand the essence of why the song was as meaningful as it was to Anyone But You on a narrative level, why it had the power to reach into the hearts of fans who made the film such a box office juggernaut, we need to take a journey through a bit of film history. But first, a cat cutaway. The rescue cat I'm fostering, Yuki, has mostly white fur with this cute brown patch of fur near her mouth, and the kittens have the same markings, except they have mostly black fur with a white patch near their mouths, but on opposite sides for one another. So I named this little guy Monroe, and his sister is Marilyn, since she and her mother have the marking on the same side as Marilyn Monroe, star of Some Like It Hot, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and that's actually a decent segue to... Back in the earlier days of film history, films were silent in the sense that you wouldn't have the sound of the actors speaking lines. There was sound, though, in the form of music to score the story. The music would help you to understand the emotion and tone of a particular scene or moment. Once we made the transition from silent films to talking pictures, one of the genres that quickly picked up steam was the musical. Although some regard the golden age of Hollywood musicals as beginning in the early 1940s and lasting through the late 1950s, the timeline is probably debatable to some, considering that Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers were already becoming major Hollywood stars as the headliners of numerous movie musicals that were released in the 1930s. Now, I'm not going to go through and list every movie musical, especially from that era, but it's important to understand that this era is a pillar of building Hollywood as an industry, as well as shaping cinematic language as people know it today. In particular, movie musicals were a hotspot for romantic storytelling.
You were meant for me.
Even the insufferable propaganda movie musicals like On Moonlight Bay or White Christmas would have at least one couple that's going to get together romantically by the time the film wraps. Some of your grandparents or great-grandparents are going to be terribly cross with me for being shady towards a Doris Day film or a Bing Crosby film. But alas, today the thesis is not focusing on how Hollywood serves as a propaganda arm for the war machine. No, instead, the thesis is about musical needle drops.
PJ.
The golden age of Hollywood musicals, the grandiose, bombastic visuals, that glorious technicolor, all of that would begin to simmer down from its place of being the main trend of the time. One of my all-time favorite directors, Baz Luhrmann, noted all the way back in the 1990s that when it came to filmmaking, the 1960s and 1970s were more so dominated by naturalism.
You know, I've acted in films, so on and so forth, and I know film quite well, but film for the last 20 years has been dominated by naturalism. So the idea was to find a kind of language, a cinematic language, that allowed this sort of very heightened, rich imagery and idea, storytelling to come through. So that's why the film is much more like a 40s musical, or a kind of MGM musical, or a screwball comedy of the 40s, than it is like a socially real kind of natural film of the 60s or the 70s.
Furthermore, the conversion of the Hays Code into the rating system we more or less still have today meant that people started to expand and push boundaries in their storytelling in the film medium. But when it comes to romance, romantic storytelling on film, the movie musical will always be a foundational part of film history. When you look at songs that are made for release by a major record label, particularly in the most mainstream channels, many of those songs are going to be about love and heartbreak. They're very frequently written about some stage of the romantic relationship. I have no interest in unpacking a long explanation or exploration of the major music industry, but I mention it only to further emphasize the point that this is yet another angle from which an audience will have this strong association between romance and music. When looking at the film medium through a somewhat more modern lens, at least in comparison to the golden age of Hollywood musicals, one can't help but start to pick up on a recurring trend of musical needle drops, particularly in films that can be categorized as rom-coms. And as such, this storytelling pattern becomes particularly resonant with an audience that loves rom-coms. It shouldn't surprise any of you watching that Anyone But You is an example of this, considering how I introduced this video. But once I began to ponder this idea of musical needle drops, especially in rom-coms, so many other cases quickly came to mind, and the easiest way to present these is, of course, to go through things sequentially. Now, all of the films I will be discussing will be labeled with timestamps, and I do recommend that you skip a section to avoid plot spoilers for any of the films I mentioned that you haven't seen yet, especially the very last one I will be discussing, because that one I want more people to watch unspoiled. My Best Friend's Wedding. This might be a controversial opinion, but I'm not actually a huge fan of My Best Friend's Wedding. I find watching it to be too stressful an experience for what I personally want from a rom-com, but it's a prime example of the point I have to make, and much to my delight, one of the stars of this film is Dermot Mulroney, who was also one of the actors in Anyone But You.
During the beginning of the movie, like the first week, we took the entire cast and to a screening room, to a theater, and showed My Best Friend's Wedding with Dermot. It was the first time that Dermot had seen it, I think, since when it came out. And he got so emotional, and everyone got emotional, and then he basically gave this big speech that had everyone in tears, and he basically turned to Glen and he said, you know, let me tell you something about being a romantic comedy, is that to people you represent love. So every time you walk around some place, no matter what you thought of that movie, you're love to people. And it was like this incredible, we thought it would just be a fun moment, but it was like this incredible emotional thing. And and Dermot played a different character in this movie. He plays kind of a dad, right? The dad jokes. Yeah.
My Best Friend's Wedding is about Jules, a 27-year-old woman who had previously made a deal with her best friend Michael that if they were both unmarried by the age of 28, that they would get married to each other. Jules wants to tell Michael she's in love with him, but upon reuniting with him, she is shocked to learn that he's gotten engaged to a 20-year-old university student. Throw the whole man away. Baby, you are 20. You do not need to be getting married yet. What is the hurry? But that's neither here nor there. Jules decides she's going to break them up. Cool. I love a good scheme, bring on the shenanigans. When Jules learns that Michael's fiancée, Kimmy, can't sing, she decides to put her on the spot and force her to sing while they are all out for karaoke together. Kimmy starts singing, horrendously, and she's embarrassed, but she keeps going. She gives it her best effort, and the other patrons at the bar start cheering her on. And Jules is taken aback to find that Michael is staring at her lovingly, adoringly. Not because he thinks she can sing. He knows the vocals are not vocaling. But he appreciates the deeper qualities of who she is. The fact that she's willing to just give it her best effort, even if she is a terrible singer. This is a perfect example of rom-coms, or just chick flicks in general, having this diegetic song serve some sort of significant emotional turning point in a film's narrative. For My Best Friend's Wedding, this is when the audience starts to become endeared to Kimmy, the same way that the other karaoke bar patrons were. Up until this point, we're more or less entirely on Jules' side, because it's Julia Roberts. Of course we're on her side. She's the main character. And she's Julia Roberts. But this karaoke number is where we start to feel how this story is not going to go on the conventional path we might have expected it to. This is a crucial turning point for the story and for the audience to reach that final destination where Jules does not get the guy. This grown man is going to get married to his 20-year-old fiancé, and Jules will be sad and single, and for some reason, Gen Xers and elder millennials will insist that this movie is a classic. Bye, I don't want it, you can have it, next example. 10 Things I Hate About You. 10 Things I Hate About You is one of my all-time favorites. This movie is Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way. I've referenced it before, but we're going to talk about it again. Patrick Verona serenading Cat Stratford with a Frankie Valli song.
I love you, baby. Trust in me when I say.
Romance peaked at this moment. It will never be outdone. Don't send me anything else. This is love, true love. Now for the backstory. Kat and Bianca have a strict father who doesn't allow them to date.
Ask Bianca who drove her home.
Kat, don't change the drove. Who drove you home?
The younger sister, Bianca, wants to partake in predictably banal high school shenanigans, so their facetious father changes the no dating till you graduate rule.
What are the 2 house rules? Number 1, no dating till you graduate. Number 2, no dating till you graduate.
Into a rule where Bianca cannot date until Kat does.
But she's a mutant. What if she never dates?
Then you'll never date. Oh, I like that.
Bianca wants to go to a party. She pleads with Kat to go. Kat agrees, drinks too much at the party, dances on the table to Biggie Smalls. Patrick looks after her to make sure she doesn't have a concussion and gets her home safely. She starts to warm up to him after being prickly about his previous attempts to ask her out.
Hey there, girlie. How you doing?
Sweating like a pig, actually, and yourself?
Which he had been trying to do because a gross guy named Joey is paying him to do so because Joey wants to go out with Bianca. Kat tries to kiss Patrick in the car and he tells her,
Maybe we should do this another time.
why didn't he kiss her? Number 1, she was drunk and still in the process of sobering up and recovering from hitting her head. And number 2, he's actually a good guy and feels morally conflicted about being paid to pursue her when he's now starting to develop a genuine connection to and interest in her.
You're not afraid of me, are you?
Afraid of you? Why would I be afraid of you?
Well, most people are.
Well, I'm not.
But Kat has a temper. She does not take the rejection well. She feels embarrassed. She has her own past with being hurt by a guy she was previously interested in. Spoiler alert, 25 years later, it was Joey. So all of her walls go right back up.
She could need a day to cool off.
Patrick forms a plan of action for this, a bit of bribery to apologize to his lady love. And thus we get the iconic "Can't Take My Eyes Off of You."
Can't take my eyes off of you.
Now, some people will claim that this is part of some toxic male behavior of grand romantic stunts that pressure women into accepting their pursuits. And to that I say, no, thou art incorrect. No one knows that Patrick is doing this stunt for Kat except Kat. The film makes a point of showing Kat looking around at the other girls on her sports team, and none of them are looking at her because from their point of view, they're simply seeing the school's rebellious bad boy with a bad reputation doing a funny stunt that's definitely going to get him thrown into detention. Patrick is not only assuring Kat that he reciprocates her romantic interest, he's also putting himself on display to be perceived by some as looking foolish. It's as much an apology as it is a declaration of romantic interest. She felt foolish for making a move on him and being, from her point of view, flat out rejected. Thus, Patrick will now make himself the fool on a far larger scale so that she doesn't have to feel alone in feeling foolish. This is a massive turning point for them to not only begin pursuing their romantic relationship, but for us to get a deeper insight into them as characters. This musical needle drop will allow Kat to begin lowering these sky-high walls she has up, and we also get to see more of who Patrick really is. He's not this big, bad, scary troublemaker. He's sweet, he's funny, he's shockingly emotionally aware when you consider the fact that he's a high school boy in the 1990s.
You never disappointed me.
I love Kat and Patrick, I love this scene, and I love this movie. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is a rom-com in which Andy Anderson and Benjamin Barry are thrust into a wacky predicament where they are trying to date each other with polar opposite outcomes. Andy is supposed to date him, do all the wrong things, and get him to break up with her within 10 days. All of this is done for an assignment at her job at a women's magazine. If she is successful, she believes she will finally be able to write about more serious topics than her previous assignments. Benjamin Barry is hoping to land a prestigious ad campaign for diamonds. His His boss is skeptical about his ability to do this campaign because romance will be integral to the advertising strategy. Ben gets tricked by some coworkers who are already familiar with Andy's assignment as they put together a bet for him to date Andy and make her fall in love with him in 10 days. If he wins the bet, he gets the diamond campaign. On one of their dates, Andy is launching her plan to drive Ben away by taking over his apartment with a hyper-feminine makeover. Some of the new objects to make it into his apartment is new music, including You're So Vain by Carly Simon. She even goes so far as to playfully sing it to him.
And other girls dream that they'd be Ben's partner.
As Andy and Ben make it closer to the 10-day deadline, they are both taken aback to find that they are genuinely developing feelings for one another. At a company ball put on by Ben's employer, Ben's boss tells him that Andy is in love with him, prompting Ben's co-workers to sabotage things by getting Andy to learn about the bet.
If you could just, like, act like you don't know anything about the bet.
I mean, if you could tell him that...
And then Ben also accidentally learns about Andy's work assignment.
You're Krull.
Andy is hurt since her feelings are now involved, so she attempts to publicly humiliate Ben, but things escalate until the two of them are on stage together in front of everyone singing a harrowing rendition of Carly Simon's You're So Vain.
Probably think this song is about you, don't you, don't you?
Tone deaf and drunk is not a good combination.
If having poor vocal technique wasn't bad enough, they are also airing out all of their grievances.
Do we want everybody to know your love making is lit?
Oh, maybe because you named my penis. Yeah.
All of their infractions against one another.
You named my penis after a name.
Well, I really think you have to get over that.
So, what once was a song associated with playful escalations in a professional and romantic entanglement is now the soundtrack to the demise of their blossoming love. Until the inevitable reconciliation, of course, because this is a rom-com, not a Greek tragedy. The Holiday. The Holiday is a rom-com in which two women, Amanda and Iris, swap houses to get away from their romantic woes. Amanda is played by Cameron Diaz, and as for Iris...
Kate Winslet.
Iris goes to LA and lives in Amanda's house. While there, she meets Miles, who works as a film composer. They become acquainted, they visit Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster? We miss you, Blockbuster. Gone too soon. Since Miles is a professional musician, it's only natural that music is Miles' love language. As they become friends, a trip to Blockbuster becomes a chance for Miles to introduce Iris to the magical world of iconic film scores. The Blockbuster scene from The Holiday where Jack Black is singing movie scores to Kate Winslet.
Roodle-dee-doo and scroodle-dee-doo. Sassy.
So I think I won this round.
Oh
really
my
sorry,
God.
but...
Yeah, whenever you bring Jack Black into the equation.
But as far as musical needle drops go, sometime later on, Iris visits the studio where Miles works on his music, and he shares the theme song he's been working on for their mutual friend Arthur, who is a famous screenwriter from the golden age of Hollywood, who is set to be honored at an event put on by the WGA.
Right? It's cheeky.
It sounds like him.
But things take a turn when Miles reveals a song that he's written for Iris.
I also wrote one that sounds like you.
You did?
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm!
Perhaps it's only natural for him to write a jingle here and there, but...
Yeah, it's called flirting, you idiot.
Iris, if you were a melody.
What makes this scene so powerful is not merely the music and the fact that he's written a song for her, but it's what he says to her about the song and the way she looks at him in response.
I used only the good notes.
That right there is the needle drop. It's the moment that things shift, where she starts to realize that there's something good, romantic, and real between them. Something that has blossomed in sharp contrast to the horrible situation she was trapped in with her on-again, off-again situation with a man back in England named Jasper.
I wish you could just accept knowing how confused I am about all this.
Thank you very much. Fuck you. Go fuck yourself.
Iris and Miles' relationship is always a slow burn, but it's this musical moment that needle drops Iris towards realization that she's feeling something romantic.
Love to.
No hard feelings. No Hard Feelings is not quite a romantic comedy, but it's the type of film that is perfectly executed to appeal to rom-com fans, and within it lies a musical needle drop that makes the film even more in spiritual alignment with the rom-coms I've been going through. Maddie is a bartender and Uber driver who is trying to raise enough money to save the house that she inherited from her mother. Although she owns the house, the property tax keeps increasing because in America, being a homeowner is not a reality unless you're a parasite.
Death to the enemies of the people of the Republic.
Maddie's car gets repossessed, and this is especially problematic since she won't be able to raise the money she needs when she is no longer able to Uber.
Do you have any idea how much money I lose every day I'm not Ubering? Summer's when I make my nut for the year.
I get it.
Allison and Laird are a wealthy couple who put out a Craigslist ad looking for someone to date their 19-year-old son. And in exchange for this, a Buick Regal.
Have you seen these helicopter parents? And they'll do everything for their kids. I'm surprised they're not gonna fuck them themselves.
Their son, Percy, is a socially awkward teenager set for Princeton. His parents are hoping that dating a woman and dating her will increase his confidence, so it's essential that he doesn't know that this woman's been paid to date him.
When you say date him, do you mean date him or date him? Yes.
So who should answer this Craigslist ad but Maddie? Their first date is at a bar, and while making conversation, they note the song playing over the speakers.
I used to have nightmares about this song when I was a kid.
Why?
Man-Eater by Hall & Oates.
Oh my God, it's our jam! This is our jam. This is our jam, ladies.
Because it's about a monster, a man-eater. She only comes out at night.
Percy is clearly a naive young adult if he's taking the lyrics that literally.
Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up.
Yeah, I don't think that's what the song is about.
Jumping ahead to another one of Maddie and Percy's dates, it's a fancy dress night as they decided to recreate prom since neither of them went to prom in high school. Now remember that Maddie's job is not just to date Percy, but to help build up his confidence and get him out of the shell that he's burrowed himself so deeply into. So she pushes him to play a song on the piano in the restaurant.
If you don't play something, I'm gonna make a toast to the entire restaurant about what an amazing lover you are.
Good. It's time to find out. Stop.
And what does he play? Man-Eater by Hall & Oates.
If you're in it for love, you ain't gonna get too far.
Slower tempo, a more emotionally raw vocal delivery, and this is the musical needle drop.
Oh, here she comes. She's a man-eater.
While Percy is singing the song, we get this prolonged shot of Maddie absorbing and processing Percy's performance and the emotions that it's summoning. You see, Maddie has been shown to be a woman who is open to hooking up with men casually, but pushes them away if they express a deeper emotional or romantic sentiment towards her. The reason given for this is trauma regarding her birth father, who was a rich man who slept with Maddie's mother despite already being married with a family. A quick payoff to Maddie's mother was enough to buy her silence, as well as the house that Maddie is now desperately trying to save. What Percy's rendition of Man-Eater does is force Maddie to reflect on this pattern of behavior that she has with men, but it's also a turning point of deepening her emotional connection to Percy. Like I said before, No Hard Feelings isn't a rom-com. Percy and Maddie do not end up a romantic couple, but they do form a genuine friendship, so in a way, Percy is the man to break Maddie's cycle of being a man-eater. Anyone But You. Now this is when we sequentially reach Anyone But You. If you clicked on this video, I'm assuming you already know about the film and about Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten, but nonetheless, I will explain it, or else what was even the point of this video? Ben and Bea, based on Benedict and Beatrice from William Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, have a meet cute in a coffee shop.
You know a lot about bathroom law.
It was a short chapter.
Romantic sparks fly, but one misunderstanding, and then they turn into enemies. As much as they would love to never see each other again, Bea's sister Hallie and Ben's friend Claudia start dating, they get engaged, and so it's time to fly to Australia for a destination wedding. While on the flight over, Bea decides she wants to enact a little revenge, petty antics, whatever you'd like to call it, by stealing Ben's first-class cookie. One physical comedy sequence later, she overhears the song playing through Ben's headphones, Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield.
What the fuck?
Later on, she and Ben end up in the Sydney Harbor, and when they are being airlifted out by Harbor Rescue, Ben reveals that he has a fear of flying and that he has a very precise routine to help him get through the many flights that he has to take for work.
I have a very specific routine. I mask, headphones, build my bubble.
B recalls the Natasha Bedingfield incident, so she proceeds to start singing Unwritten to him.
Put yourself in words unspoken. Live your life with arms wide open.
All of this is happening right after Ben and B had an honest conversation where they opened up to one another and made amends for the falling out that transpired to turn them into enemies in the first place. That reconciliation could have been sufficient enough on its own to drive the plot forward, but having a musical interlude of sorts is an important part of the process precisely because of this long-standing history of rom-coms to have emotional turning points transpire with a musical needle drop. And more than that, the deeper layers and implications of this musical needle drop are more significant than the pretentious film bros will ever understand. Ben is admitting a fear to B, and B is choosing to comfort him instead of mock him like she might have done when they were still bickering with each other at every opportunity. Ben has to be willing to admit this fear to B because it sets him on the trajectory of being able to admit to her in the end that he has also played a part in pushing her away because of his fear of getting hurt. A fear born from losing his mother.
I thought you were gonna regret it. And I couldn't face the idea of losing someone else that I really loved.
And it's so important for Anyone But You specifically to have a musical needle drop, not only for the role it plays in the film's storytelling, but because of how Anyone But You became the major comeback of the theatrical rom-com. Rom-coms released in cinemas had fallen off. There weren't as many being released when you compare it to this iconic era of the rom-com being a Hollywood powerhouse in the 1990s and 2000s, and the ones that were being released were sort of hit or miss as far as quality and commercial success go. Anyone But You resonated with the rom-com audience who never went away, we've been here the whole time, but simply weren't being offered anything that truly understood all the moving parts of what makes a rom-com stick the landing with those of us that are true fans of the genre. The musical needle drop was a giant clue, a wink and a nod, to further emphasize to the rom-com fans that the genre was back in a big way.
How do you know my Serenity song? How do they know my Serenity song?
Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten became a rallying cry to reference the film itself, the rom-com genre. Even Sydney Sweeney, while at a premiere for Madam Web, enthusiastically approached a group of fans waiting behind the barricades, specifically because they were singing Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten in her direction. But the real fans know that Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten is a signal to anyone and everyone that watches movies, not just with their eyes, but with their hearts. Now, you might think this is the end of my point, since it's sort of centered around that movie, but no, there is another. Lisa Frankenstein. Maybe it would make more sense to end this video with Anyone But You, since that's the film I've spent so many months championing, but in following my sequential format and the thesis of this video, I simply could not end this without talking about Lisa Frankenstein, the spooky little gem that had my attention from the moment I saw the teaser trailer on the big screen with the sound of Kim Pettras's In the Next Life pounding through the speakers. I will tell you in all seriousness that at this moment, Lisa Frankenstein is my #1 film of 2024. Now, to be clear, I'm recording this video in April, so maybe some other things will bump it down, but I'm still confident that it will remain somewhere in my top 10. I've even just got the Blu-ray, which just arrived along with a DVD of 10 Things I Hate About You that I ordered. If I'm already sharing, I might as well also add that I have The Holiday, No Hard Feelings, and Anyone But You on physical media. I like to let the mega corporations know that movies for the girls reign supreme and are the most worthy of being greenlit. That's the same reason why I have James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water on physical media. But back to Lisa Frankenstein. We meet our lovable protagonist, Lisa Swallows. Yes, that's really her name. The film was written by Diablo Cody, so of course we're injecting humor anywhere and everywhere that we can. Lisa is a teenage girl who struggles to express herself or connect with others because of the emotional trauma of her mother being axe murdered. And all of that happened while Lisa was at home hiding at her mother's father's insistence. Lisa spends a lot of time at the mostly abandoned Bachelor's Grove cemetery deep in the woods. There's a specific grave that she spends the most time with as she moons over the sculpture of the young man's head. One night she makes a wish to be with him, although she actually means that she wishes she was dead. However, lightning strikes, literally, and the young man is resurrected as a Frankenstein's monster-esque zombie.
I meant I wished I was in the ground, dead, because life sucks and people are jerk-offs. I didn't mean that I wanted to be with you.
The two begin to bond as she opens up to him about anything and everything. He's a great listener since he can't speak, but also because he cares about what she has to say. She's also been helping him to procure the various body parts he was missing, and also getting those body parts to reawaken by way of an overactive tanning bed. One night, after getting him a new hand, Lisa is brought back inside because he wants to show her that he can play the piano, which was something he wasn't able to do as an undead zombie because of the whole missing hand thing.
Well, I can't just get you new parts. I mean, you're a dead man, not a Chrysler LeBaron.
He then points out some sheet music already on the piano for REO Speedwagon's Can't Fight This Feeling. Lisa doesn't play piano. The sheet music belongs to her father, who has been emotionally distant and neglectful towards her ever since her mother was murdered. He also hasn't played the piano since then. The creature begins to play the song as Lisa sings the lyrics. On Lisa's side, it's a moment of happiness, of being able to feel joyful and carefree, the way every teenage girl should, but she's been unable to be that way because of what happened to her mother.
And I can't fight this feeling anymore.
The creature is fulfilling Lisa's emotional needs in a way that no one else is. But on the creature's side of this musical needle drop, he begins to cry as he finishes the song, something Lisa discourages because of an unfortunate side effect of him being undead.
Oh my god. Oh no, god damn it, when you cry it smells like a hot toilet at a carnival.
Now, she's not shaming him for his emotions, she just can't handle the smell. It's a perfectly valid response on her part. The reason he's crying is because the lyrics of the song perfectly explain his feelings and his romantic yearning for Lisa. He's in love with her, but he can't fully explain or express that to her because, one, he can't speak words at the moment, and two, she is still fixated on a crush on a boy from school, and the creature is incredibly respectful of Lisa's emotional boundaries.
That hand is going to do terrible things. And now it's a conduit for the talent of REO Speedwagon.
One of the final big reveals of Lisa Frankenstein is that one of the creature's missing body parts is down low. Lisa learns about this when she confesses her love to him and he reciprocates, but he also becomes hesitant when she asks him to make love to her.
What? Why not? Why not?
Luckily for both of them, the creature just recently cut off that exact body part, so Lisa can sew it onto him and activate it with the out-of-control tanning bed. But while she is sewing it back on, an encore from REO Speedwagon's Can't Fight This Feeling, except this time it's a cover by the millennial icon JoJo. Her version has all the powerful emotions you would expect to hear from something sung by the JoJo.
Tell myself that I can't hold out forever.
It is the soundtrack of their love story and is heard once again as they both consummate their relationship and Lisa chooses to become undead to be with the creature forever.
I can't fight this feeling anymore.
I've gotten the impression that not as many media commentators, critics, and so on and so forth have been accurate in their discussions of Lisa Frankenstein. It's not even being properly labeled from what I can tell. People focus on labeling it as horror comedy, comedic horror, and yes, it has both of those things, but at the root of everything, it's first and foremost a romantic comedy. It's a story about how wonderfully transcendent it is to find someone to love and be loved by in return. And for it to have this quintessential staple of the rom-com genre, an emotional turning point for the main couple delivered by way of a musical needle drop, what more could I ask for? Of course it's my #1 of the year so far, and I know with absolute certainty that it will stay comfortably high in my ranking by the time I reach the end of the year and do a video sharing my favorites.
You saved me.
And that is how I will wrap up my thoughts on this thesis. I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed getting to revisit so many fun rom-com classics. And yes, movies that came out within the last few months can be considered classics because it's my channel where I am choosing to uplift fiction that is made for the girls. Capital T, capital G. And if you're new here, when I say something's for the girls, it's not a gender thing, it's purely about the vibes. Thank you for watching. Thank you to my patrons. And I will be back in the next one. Bye.
So close you can almost taste it.